Before dawn, Wagadugu lay in a hushed tension that felt almost unnatural. Streetlights flickered across empty avenues, their glow reflecting on slick asphalt as black SUVs glided silently through the city. Overhead, helicopters hovered, their rotors slicing through the pre-dawn fog. The city stirred cautiously, unaware that history was about to rewrite itself in a matter of hours. And then the headlines hit: 17 facilities raided, 2 million citizen profiles seized. And the world barely noticed. The word spread like wildfire, shocking anyone who dared to glance at a phone or turn on a muted television. What appeared to be routine intelligence reports had unveiled something far larger, a vast web of surveillance, quietly embedded in the heart of the nation. At the center of it all stood Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Calm, resolute, and fearless, he watched from the command center as his teams executed a perfectly orchestrated operation. For 15 years, foreign entities had exploited Africa's most intimate secrets: citizens' personal data, communications, even confidential government files, without so much as a warning. And today, Traoré had decided enough was enough. This was no ordinary raid. This was a statement, a declaration that Africa would no longer bow to hidden empires controlling its digital destiny. From the narrow alleys of the old market to the government district, residents awoke to the sight of black-clad forces securing locations that had previously operated under the guise of aid, development, and education. Windows rattled. Voices hushed. Rumors spread faster than the morning light. What had been taken? Who was watching? And why now? Every seized server, every encrypted hard drive, told a story of deceit and exploitation. The scale was breathtaking. The stakes were monumental. With every passing moment, the operation revealed the chilling truth. For years, Africa's lifeblood, its data, its sovereignty, its very identity, had been quietly harvested. But as Traoré oversaw the meticulous confiscation of the first facilities, a larger revelation loomed, one that stretched beyond Burkina Faso's borders. What lay beneath the polished facades of these offices, behind layers of code and steel, threatened to shake an entire continent. Africa was awakening, not with whispers, but with a roar that the world could no longer ignore. And yet, in the stillness of that early morning, a question hung over Wagadugu like the fog above its streets. What would the world do when it realized the empire they had ignored for so long was finally exposed? The sun had barely broken the horizon, but the reverberations of the Wagadugu raids were already shaking the continent. To the casual observer, these were ordinary buildings, NGO offices, technology incubators, development hubs. But inside, the truth was staggering. Beneath the polished glass facades and smiling logos, a sophisticated network of surveillance and digital espionage had quietly thrived for over a decade. Africa's most sensitive information, citizens' personal data, government communications, and resource maps, had been silently siphoned abroad, layer by layer, byte by byte. What Captain Ibrahim Traoré and his forces uncovered in those first few hours was not just alarming, it was historic. Servers humming with stolen data, call logs detailing conversations between ministers, encrypted hard drives holding biometric profiles, every piece of evidence painted the same chilling picture. The sovereignty of Burkina Faso had been compromised, and by extension, the digital independence of the entire region. Analysts quickly realized the scale was unprecedented. 2 million personal profiles seized in a single morning was more than a number. It was a statement, a warning, and a wake-up call. The facade of development aid had long masked an insidious reality. Foreign companies, cloaked under banners of philanthropy and progress, had embedded themselves into the very infrastructure that connected Africa to the digital world. Fiber optic lines, telecom switches, satellite nodes, tools of innovation by day, instruments of covert surveillance by night. Every transaction, every communication, every footprint left by citizens could have been captured, analyzed, and stored offshore, ready for use by entities with agendas far removed from African interests. Reports emerging from the raids hinted at Israel's alleged involvement in orchestrating this sprawling digital empire. For 15 years, analysts suggest, networks of Israeli-linked companies quietly established themselves across West and East Africa. Lagos, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Accra, locations that appeared to benefit from development and technology partnerships were instead nodes in a covert system that tracked, duplicated, and exported the continent's most valuable data. What had once been invisible now revealed itself in stark, undeniable clarity. The implications were staggering. Sovereignty had long been measured in borders, armies, and treaties. But here, the battlefield was different. It was in servers, in encrypted communication lines, in biometric databases and satellite coordinates. Control over Africa's data meant control over policy, markets, and influence. For the first time, the stakes of national independence were being defined not by territory, but by code. Every seized document, every intercepted file, only deepened the urgency. Citizens who had trusted governments and international partners with their identities learned that trust had been weaponized. What was meant to connect and develop had been used to dominate and exploit. And yet, as unsettling as the immediate findings were, intelligence sources cautioned that this was just the tip of the iceberg. What Traoré's operation had exposed in a few hours suggested 15 years of hidden surveillance, quietly shaping decisions, monitoring leaders, and mapping resources without public knowledge. The realization sent shockwaves through Wagadugu and beyond. Africa, a continent with a long history of external exploitation, now faced a new dimension of control: digital colonization, executed through cables, satellites, and servers. And as news of the raid spread, a single, haunting question began to echo in the minds of citizens, policymakers, and observers alike. If 15 years of infiltration had gone undetected, how much of Africa's freedom had already been quietly compromised? This morning's operation, it became clear, was not merely a strike on facilities. It was the opening act of a reckoning, one that threatened to rewrite the rules of power, sovereignty, and digital independence across the entire continent. For 15 years, an invisible hand had shaped the rhythm of African cities, from Lagos to Nairobi, Accra to Addis Ababa. To the outside world, it appeared as a wave of development. Smiling logos, philanthropic slogans, digital innovation programs promising progress and connectivity. But behind the polished glass walls and glossy brochures, a far darker narrative had been unfolding. The villains were not soldiers in uniform, nor were they rogue insurgents. They were companies, intelligence-linked and strategically placed, operating under the guise of aid organizations. Cloaked in the language of generosity, they promised solutions: faster connectivity, improved education systems, agricultural innovation, technological empowerment. Their outward message resonated deeply: hope for a continent long starved of investment. And Africa, eager for progress, welcomed them. Yet the generosity was an illusion. Beneath the surface, these entities harvested Africa's lifeblood, its citizens' data, its private communications, its confidential government deliberations. Every server installed in a supposedly benign office, every satellite link promoted as connectivity, every fiber optic cable laid under the banner of development served a single hidden purpose: surveillance, extraction, and control. 2 million profiles in Burkina Faso alone. The scope was almost unimaginable. Every detail, from biometric scans to call logs, was carefully catalogued, duplicated, and transmitted to secure overseas repositories. Their arrogance was as meticulous as their operations. Engineers and analysts embedded advanced encryption and rerouting systems to ensure that even national security audits would struggle to detect the streams of exported information. These companies moved with calculated precision, exploiting regulatory gaps, political goodwill, and the trust of ordinary citizens. Where governments saw partners, they were watching predators. Where people saw opportunity, they were sowing dependency. Their reach was systemic. National telecoms rerouted through foreign servers, ministries unknowingly funneled sensitive discussions into offshore storage, and resource maps, gold, manganese, minerals, were copied with military-grade accuracy. What made them dangerous was not just their technical sophistication, but their moral blindness. Generosity was a mask. Progress was a weapon. They operated with the hubris of those who believed themselves untouchable, whose confidence was reinforced by years of uninterrupted success. 15 years of infiltration had rendered them invisible in plain sight, unchallenged and unaccountable. Each new contract, each public ceremony, each ribbon-cutting reinforced the myth of legitimacy while tightening their grasp on Africa's most vital assets. Yet for all their cunning, there were cracks in the armor, tiny miscalculations born of overconfidence. They underestimated the determination of those who valued sovereignty over submission, vigilance over compliance. Their empire, sprawling across cities and nations, had been built on secrecy and assumption that no one would look closely enough, that the public would never notice, that a single operation could not dismantle such a vast network. And that assumption, as all arrogance eventually does, contained the seeds of its undoing. Foreshadowing hung in the air like a quiet pulse, subtle but undeniable. Reports hinted at the growing unease of former employees, engineers who had begun questioning their work. Whispers in the corridors suggested a slow accumulation of errors. Servers left misconfigured, communications inadvertently traced, patterns emerging that could betray the invisible web. Their hubris had made them bold, but boldness in the face of vigilance is always a gamble. And then came Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a figure they had not accounted for. Decisive, strategic, fearless, he embodied a determination that could pierce even the most sophisticated veil of secrecy. The same networks that had operated undisturbed for years suddenly faced scrutiny sharp enough to expose their deepest secrets. The empire's strength, once thought unassailable, was about to meet its first true challenge. Every promise of aid, every hand extended under the banner of progress, now seemed hollow. The world's most advanced systems of extraction were vulnerable, not because they were weak, but because they were built on deception, and deception, no matter how intricate, always leaves traces. And as Traoré's forces prepared to uncover the truth, the villain's most critical vulnerability remained their own overconfidence, their moral blindness, their refusal to consider that someone would rise with clarity, courage, and conviction. What they did not realize, what they could never predict, was that their entire 15-year operation, sprawling across nations and systems, had one fatal flaw: it could be exposed. And when that exposure came, the consequences would ripple far beyond Burkina Faso, shaking the foundations of a hidden empire that had believed itself untouchable for a decade and a half. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was not born to headlines or heroism. He emerged from the dusty streets and modest homes of Burkina Faso, a child who learned early that survival required more than strength. It demanded clarity, foresight, and a commitment to something larger than oneself. Even as a boy, he observed the quiet injustices around him. Families struggling under systemic neglect, communities left vulnerable to external manipulation, and leaders who too often turned a blind eye to the exploitation of their people. It was in these moments that Traoré's sense of duty took root, planting a seed that would one day grow into a vision for African sovereignty unlike any other. He rose through the ranks not by seeking acclaim, but by embodying discipline. His early years in military academies and strategy programs honed a mind that could analyze chaos and extract patterns where others saw only disorder. Long nights spent studying maps, intelligence reports, and communication networks taught him patience, an ability to wait, observe, and strike with precision. His peers noted a calmness that bordered on unshakable, a demeanor that inspired loyalty even in the most tense circumstances. While others chased power or recognition, Traoré focused on understanding the systems around him, learning not just to respond to threats, but to anticipate them. Yet it was not all strategy and planning. Traoré's path was marked by personal sacrifice. He endured separation from family during crucial campaigns, often missing birthdays, festivals, and life's small moments. He walked alongside ordinary citizens in rural villages, sharing their hardships, listening to their stories, and absorbing the frustrations and fears that rarely reached the corridors of power. Those experiences shaped not only his tactical mind but also his moral compass. He understood that leadership without empathy was hollow, and strategy without conscience was dangerous. Every decision he made was filtered through a lens of responsibility, to protect his people, to honor their dignity, and to safeguard their future. Traoré's commitment extended beyond the battlefield. He immersed himself in understanding the intricacies of modern technology, recognizing early that the next frontier of power would not be marked solely by guns or borders, but by data, networks, and invisible infrastructures. While other commanders relied on brute force, he studied digital systems, encryption protocols, and the ways in which foreign actors could manipulate or exploit them. His expertise grew quietly, almost imperceptibly, until he was one of the few in the region capable of seeing the hidden architecture of control that spanned nations. But intelligence alone did not define him. Traoré combined insight with patience, carefully cultivating alliances within the military, government, and civilian sectors. He listened more than he spoke, observed more than he acted, and waited for the precise moment when his interventions could yield decisive results. His strategy was simple in principle yet complex in execution. Dismantle exploitation not with chaos, but with clarity. Confront arrogance not with rage, but with precision. Protect sovereignty not with showmanship, but with quiet, deliberate action. Those who know him personally speak of his unwavering integrity. Traoré does not act for applause or personal gain. Even in the corridors of power, where influence is currency, he has maintained a moral clarity that sets him apart. When others compromise, he chooses principle. When others hesitate, he acts decisively. It is this combination, discipline, intelligence, patience, and moral courage, that uniquely positioned him to confront a challenge few could even comprehend, a hidden empire of surveillance spanning the continent, quietly eroding Africa's autonomy. His journey has also been one of visionary thinking. Traoré sees beyond immediate victories. He understands that sovereignty is not merely a political concept but a living, breathing principle that encompasses land, governance, and now, in the digital age, data. He envisions a continent where citizens' identities, communications, and resources cannot be weaponized against them, a continent capable of standing as an equal in a world increasingly dominated by invisible power networks. Every decision he has made, every mission he has led, has been in service of that vision. Now, on the eve of a defining operation, all the elements of Traoré's life converge. His discipline ensures flawless execution. His intelligence maps every potential risk. His patience allows for the perfect timing of each strike. His moral clarity gives him the resolve to act where others might falter. And his vision fuels a determination that goes beyond personal glory. This is about the people, the nation, and a continent reclaiming what is rightfully its own. What he is about to reveal, what he is about to expose, will shake powers from Tel Aviv to Washington. The hidden networks, the stolen profiles, the digital strongholds, Traoré stands ready to pull back the veil. Yet, as the first servers are unlocked, the first files decrypted, and the first secrets laid bare, one truth becomes undeniable. This is more than an operation. It is a reckoning. And as Wagadugu streets stir with anticipation, as citizens watch silently from shuttered windows, one question lingers in the air. When a man armed with insight, integrity, and unyielding courage confronts an empire built on deceit, who will emerge victorious? The answer will redefine not only Burkina Faso, but the future of Africa itself. The first light of dawn had barely touched the horizon when Wagadugu awoke to a spectacle that would be whispered about for generations. Black SUVs glided silently through empty streets, their tires whispering against asphalt as if even the city itself held its breath. Helicopters hovered above, cutting through the pale morning mist, their rotors a steady reminder that something extraordinary was underway. Citizens peered from shuttered windows, the faint glow of smartphones capturing images that would circulate far beyond Burkina Faso. At the heart of the operation stood Captain Ibrahim Traoré, calm, composed, and methodical. Every movement he commanded carried the weight of precision, a choreography honed over years of discipline and foresight. His orders were executed with a level of coordination that blurred the lines between military exercise and surgical strike. Troops moved through the city like shadows, securing entrances, disabling external communications, and neutralizing potential resistance before it could even materialize. Inside the targeted facilities, chaos erupted. What outwardly resembled offices for development aid or technology hubs were revealed as nerve centers of a sprawling espionage network. Workers, contractors, and foreign operatives scrambled, their confidence evaporating in the face of an operation they had never anticipated. Screens flickered, encrypted Reuters blinked erratically, and the hum of hidden servers seemed to pulse with tension. The illusion of control shattered with each locked door breached, each data terminal secured. Every corner of these facilities yielded surprises that escalated the stakes. Troops uncovered biometric databases containing fingerprints, facial scans, and voice prints of millions of Burkina-based citizens. Cabinet discussions, long thought confidential, were retrieved in encrypted call logs, some dating back nearly a decade. Satellite images and digital maps detailed mineral-rich regions with startling precision. Gold, manganese, and other resources plotted in ways that revealed a hidden, methodical extraction plan. Each discovery intensified the gravity of the operation. What had been assumed to be simple aid or development was, in reality, a systematic compromise of national sovereignty. The contrast between Traoré and those he confronted could not have been starker. While the foreign operatives reacted with panic, shouting into secure lines and attempting to salvage what they could, Traoré remained an unshakable figure of control. His voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the turmoil, a single instruction here, a nod to a subordinate there, every action precise and deliberate. Where chaos reigned, he imposed order. Where fear spread, he radiated certainty. It was a masterclass in leadership, executed not with arrogance, but with clarity of purpose. As teams swept through each building, connecting cables, documenting systems, and securing servers, the scale of the operation became apparent even to onlookers. Video footage circulated almost instantly, soldiers moving enormous racks of hard drives, crates stamped with foreign insignias being loaded into armored vehicles, and clusters of operatives left bewildered, realizing the depth of their exposure. Civilians watched in awe, capturing moments that blurred the line between news and history. Social media began to buzz with hashtags, each post a testament to a public witnessing sovereignty reclaim itself. And yet, despite the meticulous planning, the true magnitude of what Traoré's forces had uncovered remained hidden. For every server seized, for every hard drive removed, there lurked layers of encrypted data, secrets encoded in the digital veins of the continent. What these facilities had held, and what Traoré had just begun to unlock, was more than files or maps. It was a revelation of control, a blueprint of exploitation that stretched far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Every step forward deepened the suspense. Analysts would later describe it as a digital excavation, peeling back years of secrecy to expose not just theft, but a system built on trust betrayed and power misappropriated. The city itself seemed to hold its breath as the operation continued, a quiet witness to history in the making. And then, at the threshold of discovery, the first encrypted folders were accessed. The first digital vaults revealed their contents: biometric profiles, call logs, satellite imagery, all meticulously catalogued, all evidence of a hidden empire operating under the guise of progress. Traoré, steady and composed, observed silently as his team documented and secured every revelation. Yet even at this stage, a larger truth hovered on the horizon. What emerged from these servers, what lay encrypted in the bowels of the operation, promised to shock the world, not just Africa. The scale, the precision, and the audacity of what had been hidden for 15 years would soon be undeniable. But the files themselves, the digital proof of decades of exploitation, had only just begun to speak. And when they did, the story they told would leave governments, corporations, and citizens alike in stunned disbelief. As the morning sun crested over Wagadugu, Captain Ibrahim Traoré remained composed, a pillar of calm in a city brimming with tension. Outside, helicopters hovered silently above the capital. Black SUVs rolled through empty streets, and soldiers moved with measured precision, securing each of the 17 sites. Inside the first facility, the evidence spoke volumes: racks of servers, encrypted routers, and storage devices linked to overseas networks. Traoré knew that what lay before him was not just a collection of machines. It was a window into 15 years of clandestine exploitation. The hero's first act was methodical. Each seized server was catalogued, every data stream traced, every encrypted file carefully decrypted. By mid-morning, the team had uncovered something staggering: 2 million personal profiles of Burkina Faso citizens. Names, addresses, biometric scans, call records, even confidential communications, all had been siphoned and stored offshore. Traoré walked the length of the room, surveying the hall with calm authority. Each piece of evidence added weight to the narrative. Africa had been quietly observed, mapped, and mined for its most valuable resources, its people and their data. The contrast could not have been sharper. Those responsible for the espionage were in disarray. Across multiple sites, operators frantically attempted to hide connections, delete files, and obscure digital footprints. But the sophistication that had once been their shield now became a liability. Traoré's team, trained for precision and strategy, anticipated every move. The villain's arrogance, 15 years of operating above scrutiny, crumbled under the meticulous execution of the Burkina forces. Cinematic pauses punctuated the day's revelations. Traoré would stop at a terminal, his gaze steady, allowing assistants to project satellite imagery onto walls. Maps of mineral-rich regions, routes for resource transport, coordinates that matched seized files. Each click, each scan, revealed the scale of intrusion. The evidence was undeniable. Foreign actors had embedded themselves across government offices, telecom systems, and educational programs, all under the guise of aid and development. News of the operation leaked in controlled bursts. Local media began reporting fragments, showing photos of sealed hard drives and stacks of encrypted devices. Within hours, social media erupted. Citizens posted videos of troops moving through streets, images of servers being removed, and commentary expressing shock and outrage. Hashtags such as #AfricaNotForSale and #OurDataOurChoice began trending, amplifying the reach of what Traoré had achieved. The hero did not need to speak. The evidence itself was a declaration. At the central command, Traoré addressed his team and the assembled press with quiet authority. He outlined the magnitude of the breach: personal data stolen, government communications intercepted, strategic resource maps copied and transmitted abroad. He paused deliberately, letting the reality sink in. Then, with precise clarity, he framed the purpose. This was not retaliation, nor was it vengeance. It was reclamation. Africa had been observed for too long, its sovereignty compromised. Today, that sovereignty was being restored. Crowd reactions amplified the moment. Soldiers exchanged glances, impressed by the scope of the evidence uncovered. Journalists typed furiously, capturing every detail. Analysts in regional capitals began preliminary assessments, realizing that what Traoré revealed could have ramifications far beyond Burkina Faso. Every revelation sent shockwaves through both the local and international community. The villainous network, once confident and untouchable, now appeared exposed and fragile. The precision of the counterattack was matched by moral authority. Traoré did not gloat, he did not seek to humiliate. He let the facts speak. 2 million citizen profiles, years of biometric data, call logs, and satellite mappings, all meticulously traced to foreign servers. Each discovery underscored the ethical breach. This was not development. It was exploitation. And for every file recovered, every server secured, Africa reclaimed a fragment of its dignity. By late afternoon, the operation was effectively complete. Traoré had dismantled a network that had operated for 15 years in the shadows, turning secrecy into exposure, arrogance into accountability. International observers took note, and the ripple effects began to spread. Governments across West and East Africa initiated audits of their own networks. Public discourse on digital sovereignty surged, and citizens felt a renewed sense of agency over their data. And yet, the day was not just about victory, it was about transformation. Traoré had not merely seized servers, he had ignited a movement. Every recovered profile, every intercepted call, every unveiled satellite map became evidence that Africa could defend its digital frontiers. The message was clear. Exploitation would no longer go unchallenged, and Africa's digital independence was now a matter of principle. As the sun set over the capital, the significance of the morning crystallized. The hum of secured servers faded, but the impact resonated across streets, communities, and governments. Traoré's calm authority, combined with methodical precision and moral clarity, had delivered a MIC drop moment that would be remembered not as a single raid, but as the dawn of Africa's digital revolution. By mid-morning, the streets of Wagadugu were alive with more than the hum of helicopters and distant sirens. The digital reverberations of Operation Clearsight had already begun to ripple across the continent. Social media erupted, and within hours, hashtags like #AfricaNotForSale and #OurDataOurChoice were trending from Lagos to Nairobi, from Dakar to Johannesburg. Screens everywhere displayed images of soldiers carrying racks of hard drives, biometric scans projected in the open, and the now infamous satellite maps of mineral-rich regions. Citizens shared footage captured on smartphones, narrating their astonishment and newfound sense of empowerment. Every retweet, share, and comment became a declaration. Africa would no longer be a silent bystander to its own exploitation. In Wagadugu's markets, young vendors huddled around smartphones, replaying videos of the operation. Mothers and fathers debated the implications over tea, their conversations mixing outrage with hope. For 15 years, our lives were quietly monitored, our privacy stolen, one shopkeeper said, voice trembling. But now, at last, someone is fighting for us. Across the city, university students painted murals declaring, "Our data, our choice," each brushstroke an emblem of defiance, pride, and renewed agency. The ordinary citizens, long relegated to observers of global machinations, were suddenly actors in a continental awakening. The impact was not confined to Burkina Faso alone. Neighboring governments moved swiftly, auditing foreign telecom contracts, examining digital infrastructure, and reviewing partnerships that had long gone unquestioned. In Bamako, Mali's regulators announced a temporary suspension of 3 companies suspected of funneling sensitive data abroad. In Conakry, Guinea's interim government froze technology contracts linked to foreign intelligence, while in Niamey, Niger launched emergency reviews of communication networks. Across West Africa, policymakers convened urgent meetings, weighing the implications of exposure and the opportunity to redefine control over their national digital assets. Across Africa, youth movements emerged almost instantaneously. Digital sovereignty became the rallying cry for students, activists, and tech communities. Forums and online debates thrived, blending practical discussions on cybersecurity with broader questions of identity, autonomy, and governance. From Cape Town to Cairo, Tech collectives began drafting principles for secure data storage, encryption standards, and ethical oversight. For many, this was not just a legal or technical challenge, it was a cultural awakening. Africa's youth had long felt powerless, their voices drowned in foreign narratives, but Operation Clear Sight had ignited both hope and action. Meanwhile, the story reverberated internationally, and the reactions were as revealing as the raid itself. Western media outlets initially hesitated, reporting cautiously or framing the events as destabilizing, while African and select Asian newsrooms portrayed the revelations as a historic stand for sovereignty. Analysts in London, Paris, and Washington debated the legality and ramifications, but in African capitals, the mood was markedly different. Thought leaders, academics, and journalists praised Traoré's decisive action, framing it as an inflection point for the continent. On digital forums and opinion columns, commentators noted that for decades, hidden networks had quietly shaped governance, economies, and national security, and that Africa was finally asserting control. Social media amplified every moment, turning citizens into chroniclers, each clip or post a testament to both outrage and empowerment. Viral threads traced the journey of every seized server, every exposed file, and every intercepted communication. Memes celebrated African ingenuity and resilience, while commentary highlighted the audacity of long-term exploitation and the brilliance of the response. Across multiple languages and borders, the message was clear: a continent had awakened to its own agency. Even ordinary acts became symbols of resistance and pride. In Lagos, teenagers shared guides on how to safeguard personal data, using screenshots from the Burkina Faso raid as real-life case studies. In Nairobi, university students staged debates titled Digital Sovereignty as Second Independence, echoing the sentiment that control over information was as crucial as control over territory. Across the continent, grassroots movements framed digital sovereignty not merely as policy but as civic duty, an inherited right to protect Africa's people, resources, and future. Amid this continental fervor, governments began considering long-term frameworks. Draft committees, initially private, started circulating proposals for unified principles of digital governance. Mandatory local data storage, third-party audits for foreign tech entities, and continent-wide protocols for monitoring potential espionage. Regional summits were quietly planned, signaling that the shockwaves from Wagadugu were evolving into something far larger, a collective movement to redefine African autonomy in the digital age. Yet, while enthusiasm soared, the world outside Africa watched with disbelief. In Western capitals, officials debated how to respond without acknowledging years of covert exploitation. Some dismissed the operation as radical, others as provocative. Meanwhile, African leaders and intellectuals framed it as courageous and necessary, asserting that sovereignty over land, resources, and now data could not be compromised. The narrative battle had begun, but the momentum of the citizens, youth, and regional governments was undeniable. As the day turned to evening, the sense of unity and purpose across West Africa was palpable. From Ouagadougou's crowded streets to Bamako's government halls, from Dakar's digital forums to Lagos University campuses, a shared recognition emerged. Africa had taken a decisive step toward reclaiming its digital destiny. What started as a pre-dawn raid on 17 facilities had grown into a continental awakening, a movement that transcended borders and challenged decades of covert exploitation. And yet, even as the celebration, planning, and analysis unfolded, one question loomed over every conversation. How would African nations now protect these digital frontiers collectively? What frameworks, alliances, and enforcement mechanisms would ensure that this moment of empowerment was not fleeting, but the foundation of enduring continental sovereignty? The answers were still forming, but the spark had been lit, and nothing would be the same again. As the dust settled over Ouagadougou and the last servers were secured, a profound truth became clear. Sovereignty is no longer measured solely by borders or armies. In the 21st century, control over one's data is as vital as control over one's land. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's decisive action had exposed more than espionage networks. It had revealed a principle long overlooked, that the lifeblood of a nation, its information, its identity, its collective knowledge, must remain under the stewardship of its people. Traoré's courage was not merely military. It was moral. He acted with patience, strategy, and clarity, guided by a vision that extended beyond immediate headlines. He understood that defending Africa meant defending the dignity of every citizen, the sanctity of national decision-making, and the right of future generations to determine their own path. In the face of arrogance, deception, and entrenched foreign power, He remained composed, unwavering, and principled. His heroism was not loud, it was deliberate, calculated, and visionary. The early outcomes of Operation Clear Sight reinforced the wisdom of that vision. Within weeks, internet speeds across Burkina Faso doubled, and consumer costs for data plummeted, giving citizens faster and more affordable access to the digital world. Indigenous tech ventures began to flourish. Local engineers and startups stepped into spaces once dominated by foreign contractors. Cloud storage platforms, cybersecurity firms, and fintech innovations emerged, creating jobs, nurturing talent, and affirming that Africa could design, operate, and govern its digital future without reliance on hidden foreign networks. Every improved connection, every secure server, every locally run platform became a testament to the empowerment of a continent reclaiming its agency. But the lesson extends far beyond technology or economics. This was a story of justice, integrity, and self-respect. It demonstrated that a nation need not wait for permission to protect its people or to assert its rights. By dismantling 15 years of covert surveillance, Traoré sent a message that reverberated across the continent. Exploitation will no longer be tolerated, and Africa's resources, physical or digital, are not commodities for external interests to manipulate or control. Communities, young and old, recognized the significance. Students debated digital sovereignty as part of civic education. Families discussed privacy rights alongside land and natural resources. Civil society organizations advocated for transparent governance and secure networks. Across borders, African governments began coordinating strategies, drafting continent-wide protocols to safeguard citizen data, and creating frameworks that would define accountability and oversight. A collective awakening had begun, a movement not just to react to threats, but to proactively shape the terms of Africa's digital destiny. The ripple effects were immediate and profound. Citizens felt empowered. Entrepreneurs saw opportunity. Policymakers embraced accountability. And the global narrative began to shift. Where once Africa had been portrayed as a passive recipient of technology and aid, it now stood as a decisive actor, asserting control over its infrastructure, its people, and its future. Traoré's actions were no longer just a national story, they were a continental call to consciousness. And so, as the sun set over Burkina Faso, the moral clarity of the moment crystallized. Sovereignty is not granted, it is claimed. Justice is not symbolic, it is enacted. Dignity is not negotiable, it is defended. The battle for digital independence is ongoing, but the path has been illuminated. Every secure network, every transparent partnership, every empowered citizen contributes to a continent that no longer bows in silence. Africa rises, unbowed, capable of defending its resources, its identity, and its citizens' rights. The dawn of this digital revolution reminds every nation, every community, and every individual that true power lies in knowledge, stewardship, and unity. And as voices echo from the markets of Wagadugu to the halls of the African Union, the rallying cry resounds with unwavering clarity. Africa bows to no one. Our data. Our choice.